All right, why don't we kick things off here? I want to welcome everyone to the Copyright Alliance's World IP Day celebration, titled "The Business of Sports and Copyright." I appreciate everyone joining us today. I think it's going to be very, very interesting discussion about sports and copyright, and we've got a lot of really, really good speakers. So I am the Copyright Alliance CEO, Keith Cooperschmidt. I'm very pleased to introduce today's moderator, Miriam Lord, who is the Associate Register of Copyrights and Director of Public Information and Education at the U.S. Copyright Office, and she will be moderating today's very, very interesting World IP Day panel. Miriam brings a deep expertise at the intersection of IP policy, policy engagement, and creative industries. In her role at the U.S. Copyright Office, she leads the national effort to make copyright law more accessible and more understandable while shaping outreach and education initiatives that support creators and innovators. Previously, she directed the Global IP Academy over at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, where she advanced international IP training and capacity building programs. With a career spanning legal practice, academia, and public service, Miriam offers a uniquely informed perspective on the evolving role of IP in today's global digital economy. So thank you very much, Miriam, for doing this, and everyone please join me in welcoming Miriam Lord to today's event. Miriam, you can take it from here.
Well, thank you so much, Keith. That's very kind. And thank you to the Copyright Alliance for hosting today. And thank you so much for all of you for joining all of us today. I think, as Keith said, it's going to be a fun conversation to have. This year's theme for World IP Day is IP in Sports, Ready, Set, Innovate. And in this Business of Copyright and Sports program, we're honored to hear from a bunch of folks across industries impacted by the intersection of copyright and sports. So I'll just mention on behalf of the Copyright Office just quickly that, there's a powerful connection between creativity and competition and the copyright systems that support them. And copyright shows up all throughout the sports world, from esports to broadcasting to arena music, team uniforms sometimes, the standards that we have all over the place. So I'm excited to get to know with all of you some of the folks on today's call, hear their unique perspectives, and celebrate World IP Day with all of you. So I'm going to go around the room and ask our colleagues to introduce themselves, just really briefly, starting with Michael.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you to the Copyright Alliance for putting this program together. I am Michael Lewis. I am Associate General Counsel for Law and Policy at the Entertainment Software Association. At the ESA, we are the representatives of the video game industry, and we serve as the voice for the video game industry on many issues, especially IP and copyright issues. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you so much. All right, over to Randy.
Hi, thanks to the Copyright Alliance for having me here. Happy World IP Day. My name is Randy Cinco. I'm Vice President of Business Affairs in the licensing department of Broadcast Music, Inc., which is a performing rights organization here in the US. And we represent songwriters and composers and music publishers in the licensing of the performing right in their musical compositions to different music users, including in sports.
Thanks, Randy. Chris?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christian Dubay. I am Vice President and Chief Engineer with the National Fire Protection Association. In that role, I'm responsible for all of our technical operations, including our 300 plus safety codes and standards that we develop. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Guillermo?
Good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you for the Copyright Alliance for hosting this event. My name is Guillermo. I'm the Director of Live Content Protection at Motion Pictures Association and the Alliance for Creativity and Entertainment. That's the global anti-piracy coalition of over 50 major media, broadcasters, and even sports organizations. Really looking forward for this very interesting conversation today.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Edward.
Hi there, Edward Muncey. I'm actually with representing UFC today. I'm with Stream Enforcement. This is such a great subject to be talking about today. Thank you so much for bringing this up for everybody. It's super important and critical. We have I can't wait to talk about this. I'm so excited to bring attention to this subject. But we're focused on live event enforcement and also recorded content. And thanks to the DMCA, which we're going to talk about today, this is perfect timing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, let's get into it. I think the first, we're going to start with esports, and then we're going to move into some music, into codes, into enforcement, and then finally into some of that piracy and DMCA things that we were just talking about. So I'm going to go over to Michael first to take it from here. First of all, just to set the stage for everybody, this year's theme is copyright and sports. We're going to start with esports. Could you just give us a definition for esports to round us? And then we can talk a little bit about how copyright law applies to it and if it's different than for traditional sports.
Absolutely. So esports is an organized, sporting competition surrounding a particular video game title. Esports has been taking off across the country and the world in the last decade or so, and it especially became extremely popular during the pandemic, where obviously, we were all locked down, not having opportunities to go to live sporting events and the like. And esports and esports tournaments gave everyone an opportunity to really connect and enjoy competitive video game play from our living rooms and from our computer screens. Esports for our industry has really taken center stage, and there are a lot of debates about, is esports, is it a sport? Do you consider, sitting in a chair and using a controller as a athletic endeavor? And I am here to tell you that esports competitors kick butt. They are amazing competitors, and the skill level that they have to, sort of practice and endure is absolutely top tier. I could not compete at that level.
Oh, me
But
neither.
it certainly is a growing part of the video game industry. And when we talk about the video game industry in particular, copyright is at the forefront of these conversations. Obviously, from our perspective, the video game space is one of the most creative mediums with which to create. And when we talk creativity, when we talk innovation, we circle back to our North Star, which is copyright law. So when, there are all forms of IP that are contained within a particular game. That obviously would be copyrights, trademarks, patents, as well as trade secrets. But on the copyright side, copyright helps our members protect the source code, the foundation of the game, how the game operates. That is protected by copyright. The visuals, right? So we've got the artwork, the illustrations, how the medium through which people play the games, those are all also copyrightable. The music and sound effects, voice acting, like all of these, components are copyrightable, as well as, characters and the environments through which the game is played. So, I'm a little bit long in the tooth. I started playing video games in like the 80s. And, some of my favorite games were Pac-Man and Super Mario Brothers. Those were staples for me. And, today's gaming environment is so different. So back in the day, it would be me and a friend on the couch holding controllers that had wires connected to a console. Today, people are connected through the internet. People can play with each other millions of miles away on the other side of the world and enjoy that interaction and engagement. And, esports provides that sort of platform for people to compete against each other. Sometimes these competitions happen virtually, and sometimes these competitions happen, together in one particular area. The one, and I'm going to talk more about the esports issue, especially the policy issues that intersect with copyright. But I think people need to understand how popular video games are. Now, I know I've got some colleagues here from the movies, from the movie industry, and some that support the music industry, and we love those industries because those industries form and have helped video games develop over the years. And quite frankly, when you look at a video game, sometimes it's hard to tell whether or not you are watching a real live show versus an actual video game itself. But the video game industry today, in terms of revenue, makes more than music and movies combined. That's how big our industry has become. Over 200 million Americans play video games at least once a day. And those old sort of stereotypes of a young kid in a basement slamming Mountain Dew while they're playing video games on a tattered couch do not hold up in terms of what our research shows of who plays video games. The average age of a video game player is 36 years old. And there are equally amount of men that play video games and women. Women comprise up to 49% of video game players. So that is our industry. That's how sort of vast it is, and that gives you a sense of how esports became or is becoming a really strong medium within the video game space in terms of a competitive landscape that people really enjoy taking part of. So what does the esports landscape look like? Is it just a bunch of people in different parts of the world playing a competitive game with each other? Yeah, that's one picture, but that's not the only picture. What we have in terms of esports is a whole slew of different pieces that all work in concert together. So obviously you've got the game. Game is protected by copyright. The game is controlled by a publisher. So you think of EA, or you think of Epic, Nintendo. Like these are all publishers, but all these publishers don't necessarily make games for esports. But there are a few like Riot and Valve that make specific games for esports, and they're extremely popular. So the games are the foundation, right? That is the building block of esports. And then you've got teams. There are some individual competitions, but most of the time you have teams playing together in concert to defeat other teams and other squads. And then you've got leagues. Think about your NBA, your NFL. You've got esports leagues that stand up the competitive rules. They are the ones that, do the qualifying as to who gets to move on and play in the playoffs and the championships and the like. So leagues form a huge part of esports. And then you've got, how does the consumer interact with the competition? How do they get to see it? Well, some of the biggest esports tournaments will sell out a indoor NBA style stadium, which to me is just mind blowing. But that does happen. But a lot of the competitions are streamed via YouTube and Twitch, just to name two very popular modes of transmission. So you've got those technology streamers that support esports. And then you've got advertisers. Just like anything, you walk into a stadium, there's Coca-Cola placards and all kinds of different advertising opportunities that also exist in esports. And so before, I know my time is running short, so I just want to leave folks with two policy issues that intersect with copyright that the esports world is currently grappling with. Number one is cheating. Obviously, nobody wants to, no competition will be able to have a fair playing field if you have cheaters who are, infiltrating the game in order to give themselves an unfair advantage. And in the video game space, how people cheat is injecting code into a particular game to give them a particular advantage. When you talk about cheaters, two things automatically come to mind for our industry is number one, DMCA Section 1201 circumvention issues. If you are these games have protections placed in the games to make sure people don't cheat. And of course, the cheaters are clever. They figure out ways to get around it. And that is one of the ways that the DMCA might be triggered if an individual is cheating and they're bypassing our anti-cheat measures. So that's one issue. The other issue is sometimes that code has to copy the underlying code of the game in order for it to work. And that's a copying issue, an infringement issue traditionally, in the Copyright Act. So those are, those are some issues, policy issues surrounding cheating. Another policy issue is, should esports be regulated as a sport? Here's the big difference. When you have a FIFA or the International Olympic Committee, they are, traditional sports governing bodies that, help set the rules for a particular sport, whether it's football or global football, or here in America, soccer, track and field. They set all of the rules and the like. Well, when it comes to esports, the publishers who own the IP are the centerpiece of the particular competition. So sometimes a regulator or a lawmaker will say, "Hey, we want esports to be regulated by a traditional governing body, and we want that governing body to set the rules." Well, then how does that work when you have someone who owns IP, but you're mandating a third party to make the rules that may infringe on the underlying IP? Perfect example is if a governing body says, "Hey, I have been empowered to organize an esports tournament, and we're going to do it in France on this day, and we're going to use this game." Well, did they get permission from the publisher to actually use that game? I started the conversation, talking about esports and regular sport. This is a serious kind of policy issue that we are constantly grappling with because lawmakers don't get it right. Most of the time, they try to fit a round peg into a square hole and say, we're going to regulate esports like sport. And unfortunately, they can't do that. So I know that's my time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about something that I'm super passionate about. And thank you, Copyright Alliance, for giving me a little bit of leeway to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's just such interesting background. And I think it's an interesting pivot to Randy, who is going to talk a little bit about music and sports, just thinking about all the layers that we're talking about when we're talking about the viewer's experience or the participant's experience in sports. So I'll hand it to you to talk a little bit about how music licensing works in the sports event and broadcast space, and what role do performing rights organizations or PROs like BMI What role do you play in licensing music that's used at sports events or in the sports broadcasts themselves?
Great, yeah. Thanks, Miriam. That was super interesting, Michael. And yeah, I think the complexity also applies to music in sports. If you've ever actually been to a sporting event or watched it on TV, you know that music is everywhere in sports. It provides the vibe of energy and hype and camaraderie and fellowship and drama. It's clear that it's embedded in the fan experience, and for that reason, sports teams and broadcasters are actually significant commercial users of music, and so they need licenses to use the music. So I think the most important thing, most basic thing, really, to understand about music licensing, and a lot of you probably already know this, but sometimes it's surprising to people. But there are actually 2 copyrights in every song that's used. The first copyright is in the musical composition, which is the underlying song, the notes and the melody and the lyrics. And that, of course, is created by a songwriter or a composer. And the copyright right is owned or controlled by the songwriters or the music publishers. And we all know the Copyright Act grants a number of exclusive rights, and the one that I usually talk about for musical compositions in this context is the public performance right, which is the right to publicly perform the work, and that's what I'll talk about in a minute for within BMI's bailiwick. And there's the synchronization right, which is not specified in Section 106, but it's sort of an amalgam of the right to control the reproduction and copying of a work, and also to create derivative works. The second copyright when you're using music that you need to think about is the copyright in the sound recording, which is the specific recorded performance that you hear, and that is created by a performer, and it's recorded in some sort of medium. Typicically, that is controlled by a record label. There's different ways that comes into play, but it's actually a more limited copyright than the copyright in the musical composition, because there's actually no general public performance right in the performance of a sound recording, other than in the transmission of a sound recording through digitally. So the main right that we usually talk about in music licensing for the sound recording is the master use, which is similar to the synchronization right. It's using the sound recording in conjunction with video, essentially. So when a song is played at a sports event or in a broadcast, you're almost always using the composition in some fashion. You may or may not also be using the sound recording. It depends on the context, but that distinction is important, because different, as I said, the different rights are owned or controlled by different people, and you have to go to those different people for the licenses. And BMI, as a performing rights organization, we represent the songwriters and the publishers for the public performance right. We don't license the sound recording rights. And for most sports uses, the public performance right is what's implicated. So if you're in the stadium and it's played over the speakers, or if it's played by a live band in the stadium, like at halftime, like walk-on music, when the team comes onto the field, or the players, marching bands, DJs, all that stuff, those are all public performances. um, within a stadium. There's also the broadcasts, so broadcasts on TV or on radio, streaming. That is also the public performance right. And the music users need to seek the public performance license from the PROs. In the US, there are 4 main PROs. BMI is one of them. It's the largest one. There's ASCAP, CSAC, and Global Music Rights, which is also known as GMR. So all of us represent a number of songwriters and composers and publishers. BMI represents more than almost 1.5 million songwriters and publishers right now. And we collect all of their works in a repertoire that we license out. And so our repertoire is like 25 million works. And we issue blanket licenses to perform any work in our repertoire to music users, and we collect the license fees we enter into licenses and we collect the license fees from those users. We go out to license, in this context, sports leagues or the teams, depending on the deal structures. We license venues like stadiums. Those are for the in-person events. We license TV networks, all broadcast and cable networks, and streaming services for their usage. We also track the music use in these contexts, and then we use that to figure out how we distribute the license fees as royalties to our songwriter and publisher affiliates. So I think the blanket license that I mentioned is kind of the key interesting part of how PRO is licensed. It's, as you can imagine, people become songwriters all the time. People are constantly writing songs, and we want to encourage them to constantly write songs. But it's difficult for music users to negotiate these rights on a song-by-song basis, especially if the volume of songs is really high. And so, at least for the performing right, they can come to a PRO and get a license that covers all of our songs. And if you have licenses with all the PROs, you have the right to perform all of the music basically in the U.S. market. So I mentioned that for the most part, the public performance right is what's implicated in music use. I didn't mention, and the PROs license that. I do want to talk a little bit about the other kinds of rights.
Just real briefly.
Just really briefly. So for in stadium performances, you really only need to think about the public performance right. But on broadcast and streaming, you will also have to think about the synchronization right or the master use right. Those are negotiated on a song-by-song basis with the rights owners there. The responsibility for that is usually with the production company or with the broadcaster. We saw during the Olympics earlier this year a bunch of I don't know if controversy is necessarily the right word, but a lot of publicity about who's responsible for getting all the licenses, it's a complex issue, but it's important to get to get the right advice to look at what all the rights that you need to.
Thank you, Randy. Well, I know that a part of the enjoyment of watching the sports, is engaging with the music, and it's so helpful to remember that, copyright's a bundle of rights, and one of those bundles of rights for music performance is through a PRO. So thank you for that. background and the distinction with some other things that have to be considered. So thank you so much. We're going to pivot to Chris, who's going to talk to us a little bit about codes and standards, which is also a sort of a heady concept to get around, and then talk about how it applies to sports. So what are the codes and standards like the ones that standards development organizations, SDOs, like NFPA, and what role do they play in helping to keep sports events and the fans safe? Speaking of the fan experience. Why is copyright protection so important? And why do they also benefit those who play and watch sports?
Thanks, Miriam. Again, thank you everybody for attending this webinar. As I was reflecting on the webinar, I just realized just moments ago that last year I spoke on World Standards Day. Today I'm speaking on World IP Day. So it's kind of a geek, almost trifecta. I have to find another World Day. So I can see everybody asking, like, why is the National Fire Protection Association speaking here? And I on esports, I get it. It's kind of weird, and I hope that in about 4 or 5 minutes of my comments here, that I can connect not only the importance of standards to us, but also some real fundamental copyright challenges that are impacting us as standards developers. So I'd ask you to bear with me as I talk a little bit about who NFPA is, but also explain the copyright challenge that we're all facing. So NFPA was founded in 1896, and since then, NFPA has independently been developing codes and standards to make the world a safer place. Since our beginnings, we've been a self-funded, not-for-profit organization, which ensures our independence, guaranteeing that no entity can influence the outcomes of our open, transparent consensus standards development process. At the same time, anyone in the world can participate in this process, except, of course, for NFPA staff, because we act as the neutral facilitators of that process. Now, for 130 years, NFPA's codes and standards have been relied upon by industry, insurance, first responders, local and national governments around the world to be the most up-to-date and relevant safety standards. Governments and regulators have been relying on the efficient and transparent NFPA consensus-based codes and standards process since the very beginning, which continues to be one of the most successful examples of a true public-private partnership. Now, for all of us, these NFPA codes and standards are critical to safety in every aspect of our lives, from schools to hospitals, to sports and sports venues, to shopping malls, and at the same time, addressing the first responder safety around fires, hazardous materials, and even such terrible things as active shooter events. Now, NFPA doesn't take money from others to support the standards development process. We rely on selling our copyrighted codes and standards to those who use them as contractors, builders, engineers, manufacturers, etc. But at the same time, we provide free online access to all of these codes and standards for anybody who wants to read them, review them, and look at them. Now, when we start to think about copyright and how it's critical to sports now, whether it's the music we heard about, the facilities, the esports content, or the like, I want to take a look at the importance of these copyrighted safety standards in just one aspect of sports. Now, NFPA developed these codes and standards to keep athletes and spectators safe at, I'll say, traditional sporting events, whether you're in a high school gym or a professional stadium. And safety is ensured in these large sporting events, like these large esport tournaments that Michael talked about. And we use specific key standards to do that. First and foremost, NFPA 70 is our national electrical code. That ensures all the electrical systems are operating safely and reliably. If it's an esports venue, you better have electricity. So you need those standards in place. Now, as an example, if a fire occurs in one of these events, NFPA 72 addresses the fire alarm system, and NFPA 13 addresses the automatic sprinkler system. This ensures the earliest detection of a fire and the fastest response by the sprinkler system to control that fire and its effects. But at the same time, all the attendees are protected by the NFPA 101 Life Safety Code to ensure that they are in the best possible position to identify their exits and get out of the facility safely. Now, the part where you get IP on this for us as a standards developer is you can't forget that as a self-funded not-for-profit, our IP rights are vital to protecting our global mission, which is the elimination of death, injury, and loss from fire, electrical, and related hazards. It's a big mission. And this copyright funding ensures the continued development of codes and standards to keep pace with changing technology, emerging hazards, and risks around the globe. And the challenge that I want to share with you is today, this system, this long-standing public-private partnership is fundamentally at risk. specifically around codes and standards that are incorporated by reference or IBR'd into various laws across jurisdictions. Recent court decisions are bringing into question the IP rights of copyrighted materials from standards developers like NFPA, indicating that for IBR codes and standards, when they are IBR, they become freely available to parties, not just not-for-profits, but also for-profit entities, simply because a jurisdiction determined they were the best way to keep their citizens safe. Now, we at NFPA could not more strongly disagree, and I know our friends at the Copyright Alliance feel the same way. Decisions like these fundamentally place the entire independent standards development system at risk, as well as the financial model and mission of organizations like NFPA. All of us, everyone who's listening to this webinar, are safer because of these safety standards, whether it's a sporting event or at our homes, and they protect each of us every day. This reliance on independently developed codes and standards to provide public safety is now placing our IP at risk. And I want to encourage everyone to get up to speed. If you agree, get involved. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, I don't quite get this today. And that's okay. We understand that. I'd encourage you to visit our website, www.don'tchancesafety.org. It's all one word. Read the materials, watch the videos, and if you're supportive of it, please click on the Act Now button. Make your voice heard. It is an important thing for all copyright holders. So thank you. I think, Miriam, I might have given you a couple of minutes back and gotten us a little more on time. But I do look forward to the discussion and follow-up questions. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Right on time. Thank you so much, Chris, for that. We're thinking about the fan experience, the music that you hear, the safe experience you have, and we're going to pivot to Guillermo to talk a little bit about the piracy as it relates to sports events. So if you could talk a little bit about ACE's role in helping to prevent and tackle piracy for sporting events and the kind of coordination it takes to pull off an anti-piracy effort in that context. Just to walk us through what the stakeholders are, what do the timeframes look like? Like how do you handle this?
Sure. Thank you very much, Miriam. So basically, ACE, the Alliance for Creativity and Entertainment, is a alliance, is a coalition that represents some of the biggest audiovisual companies nowadays. Those companies, they create with a huge amount of effort, resources, passion, unique audiovisual products. Many of us, we know them very well. But what is happening is that we are seeing a situation in which different pirates, different organized criminal organizations, they are stealing that content and offering that audiovisual product for free, completely illegally. So what's ACE's role here? So basically, ACE is putting together all necessary resources to facilitate organized disruption, organized dismantling of this kind of criminal organizations, working with a three-pillar strategy that is that we need to detect, deter, and dismantle those criminal organizations. It is very important also to understand that we are dealing with a transnational crime. Our infringements normally happen across the internet, so that complicates a little bit more the enforcement piece and how we can fight against these criminal organizations. And also, it really highlights the collaboration or the support needed from public authorities, public institutions, but also from private entities to be able to be really effective against this problem. And let me give you one example. We may have a criminal organization, a pirate organization that is based in China, that is selling different set-top boxes that are coming into the US or coming into Europe. Those set-top boxes sometimes are even being infected by malware, even using the IP from your home as a residential proxy for different illegal and bad stuff. So that criminal organization may be sending money across different structures in Latin America, and the heads of the operation may be based in Brazil, Argentina, Italy, Spain, everywhere. So we are dealing with organizations that they have different locations, different offices, with proper marketing tools, with proper financial teams, with proper human resources team, and even with proper engineers. So what we need is a very smooth and active cooperation from all of the intermediaries, all of the companies that support technologically speaking, those kind of illegal activities. So we are talking about hosting providers, CDN providers, search engines, marketplaces, and even social media platforms. So we need to act in the entire supply value chain of the piracy distribution, from the theft of the content on different digital platforms to the consumption of content on the different end user devices. What's the problem that we are having nowadays, or what's the big challenge to protect the different IP assets? That sometimes this collaboration is not working as fast as we need. We need to understand that when we are talking about live content, every minute counts. Our content is perishable. So one football game, one soccer game that is being played today, that revenue loss can be recovered tomorrow. So in just 2 months from now, we will have the World Cup in the US, Mexico, Canada. It's an event that will receive worldwide attention, but also will receive a huge demand from different pirates consumers. So from ACE, we are already deploying different initiatives to protect and to work around this event, and we are coordinating with different law enforcement agencies. But unfortunately, this is not happening in other parts of the world, and this is not happening also with some companies that sometimes they are not cooperating probably as much as they can. So I believe that with all the support, all the coordination from the entire technological ecosystem, we may be in a much better situation to protect all of the different IP assets. And just as a reminder, we are not just protecting the assets by itself. For sure, it's illegal, but also we need to understand that we are protecting all the families that are being affected by those by those illegal streams. We are also defending different employments. We are defending the investments that are being put in place, but also users that are getting access to pirate. They are being put on risk. They are assuming to have Trojans on their devices. They are assuming to have malware on these devices. They are giving access to whoever is to different kind of private data. So really looking forward to this conversation. And remember that for life infringements, every minute counts.
Thanks so much, Guillermo. Just thinking about all of the identified rights we were talking about earlier, and especially in the context of major sporting events and whether they're esports events or in-person sporting events, and then the value chain of the participation, the performance, and then the broadcasting, and all of the music and all of the properties, and then thinking about what happens during, in the enforcement of piracy is. It's helpful context as we think about all of the different parts of how sports and copyright intersect. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to hand it now to Edward, just to talk a little bit about the type of piracy that UFC is regularly encountering and how you address it. And then we could talk a little bit about the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and the role in which it's played.
Sure. And let me just say, Guillermo and what ACE does, they are so amazing. What he does and their team, have to take a more patient and strategic approach to handling everything. They took a look at the big picture, and then they go after it, and they are so effective. So hats off to them. We're big fans, obviously, of what they do. What we do at UFC and stream enforcement, we're on the front lines of it. It feels like a battle every time we go into it, and that's how we have to treat it. It's super important. I'll just give just a highlight of what it looks like. Now, these UFC events, they are amazing. They're worldwide events. Their athletes are from all over the world, so it draws interest. Every event is a little bit different, and where we see that piracy coming from. But as you think about it, these are typically 7-hour long events, beginning with the preliminary bouts, and preliminary bouts are typically just a few hours, and they're typically offered for free. And you would think, well, who would ever pirate free content? Well, it's widely pirated, and so we have to be on our game from the moment it starts in the afternoon until late at night when the event ends. But it's aggressive in the beginning, is taking off for the foreign websites as well as the social media platforms. And keeping in mind that these are often used, especially on social media posts, saying, you know what, if this stream goes down, I have a backup stream, go over here, or check this website out later for the main event tonight and watch it here, where they're monetizing on their own website. So those are why it's critical for us to be on our game from the very first preliminary bout that far into it. And again, when you think it'd be free. Now, as you transition into the main card, as you get closer to it, we see the piracy starts exploding across all platforms. And thank goodness for the DMCA that it is in place. And ever since UFC got into actually offering pay-per-views digitally on the web back in 2006, thank goodness there's something to point to help the websites that was new to them too. These webs back in the day it was DVDs being uploaded to YouTube, but once we launched pay-per-view on digital, it changed the game for us and had to pay attention to this. Thank goodness DMCA was in place at that time. Thank goodness it still is today because it does provide a framework for these traditional social media platforms or any sources of the CDNs and everybody that Guillermo had mentioned. But there are new entrants to this, and some platforms might have been around for a while, and now suddenly, recently, becoming more popular for watching live content or recorded content. There's always a bit of education, which I bet everybody here is doing the same thing, and that is educating them to how important it is to take down that content quickly. And we always point back to the DMCA on that. Now, there's still some platforms today that think that expeditious is in the DMCA means, well, might mean a few hours from now or Monday morning after a Saturday night event, and our job, all of us, is here. No, it's now, it's real time, has to be immediate, and that's constant. The good news is that most of the social media platforms have built some fantastic platforms that have actually gotten in front of it, that actually have helped deter piracy. And then you have the new entrants, which are still, again, as I said, they're still learning, and they'll come at it with their own approach, which is good. And we just hopefully help them along. But our job is to let them know how critical this is, because as a UFC event, we move from free content and then you go behind a paywall. Our job is to get that content as quickly as possible so that they can be converted into subscribers. UFC is now with Paramount this year it's under a subscription paywall, where in the past it was under pay-per-view, which was at a premium price point. So now it's a bit easier for fans to actually join and buy the subscription, but that does not slow down. We have to stay just as intense. And of course, now during the live broadcast, which is a big problem, thanks again to DMCA, is the recordings of those bouts showing up right before the bout ends. So again, coming back to that we need it to come down quickly. Of course, there's a change. We hope that just as some further definition that we hope through legislation will be made at some point soon. It should be low-hanging fruit for everybody. And that's just to put further definition on what expeditious removal means. It means right now on the weekends and almost in real time. So I'll leave it at that as far as for UFC events and just how important DMCA has been.
Thank you so much, Edward. Well, I think that was a great overview of lots of different areas of sports related copyright and IP discussion. I'm going to welcome all the speakers back onto the screen. We're going to get into a couple specific areas, and then we're going to get to a series of questions. Before we go into the first topic, I just have a housekeeping note, which is just that we have some staff who are answering a couple of questions in the chat, but that the other questions will hold to the end. So thank you so much to the audience for your engagement and your attendance and your attention during these remarks and for your engaging questions. So I think we're going to go out in sort of the maybe the same order through to delve into a topic that I know has started to kind of permeate everything, and that is artificial intelligence. So I just want to take from each of you, and we'll take our time through this because there's a lot to unpack, but each of you on relatively briefly, how does artificial intelligence impact each of your industries? And as far as that's especially related to copyright and to IP, that's sort of the main hook. So we'll start first with Mike.
Great, thank you. That is a great question. I think that is an issue that is permeating in everything that we do in relations to video games and esports. And I want to focus on the impact of AI in protecting our members' games and protecting, in particular, from the cheating issue that I raised before. Many of our members are using, machine learning in addition to AI to generative AI to scan the games, make sure that there's a level playing field. If they see that a player is operating with the accuracy of what looks like a computer, it might be a computer. And AI helps find those instances, and it gives the members the opportunity to quickly level the playing field by doing a number of different things. AI is definitely something that can be used to help protect the games, protect the level playing field, and I think we're just scratching the surface as to what uses, what positive uses can happen within the video game space.
Thank you, Michael. Fascinating. All right, Randy, what about you in the music and PRO space?
Yeah, as you can imagine, AI is a huge issue in the music industry, especially generative AI. You've got the training issues with training of the LLMs and the corpus that they use, the copyrightability of the output, and just as a general matter, like AI is a tool for helping songwriters and composers, do their work, produce more music. So we've been following AI for years at this point, really trying to understand the developments. We talk to our industry partners all the time about their policies and positions on AI, well, particularly AI generated content. And we've actually held this is over several years. We've held a lot of listening sessions with our songwriter and composer affiliates and even other non-affiliates to talk about not just the challenges of AI, but also the opportunities. And I think we found over time that there's always going to be creators who decline to use AI in their work, but it seems like more and more songwriters are sort of shifting their thinking, I guess, as the tools have developed, to start to embrace it in supporting and enhancing their creative process. So it's interesting to see. I think it'll just continue becoming embedded in the industry. And actually, so one of the things that BMI has announced recently with a couple of the other North American PROs, we've announced alignment of policies on accepting registrations for partially generated music or music that uses AI in the process of creating the music. It's obviously we champion human creativity and we the sort of the copyrightability, the minimum threshold for copyrightability has to be upheld. But since more and more songwriters are using it, we all wanted to be consistent in the way we've accepted registrations, and also gathering more information about how composers and songwriters are using AI. So yeah, it's just a never-ending. We could talk forever on this topic in the music industry, but huge impact.
Thank you. All right, Chris, from your perspective.
Yeah, and I think I'll skip over the copyrightability of the output because I think we've shared that already. I think so there's really two parts. That part, and the second part though becomes in the actual skill of AI. If you ask AI to solve a safety problem, often you get really bad advice. So it becomes a challenge when you're trying to do it. However, at the same time, AI can be really effective at what have we missed when we've considered this challenge? What gaps should we be looking at to almost use it as questions in testing? So it's a copyrightable challenge for us, but also a challenge for you really can't rely on it to make strong safety decisions. So it is just a tension for our technical experts from around the world for us.
Interesting. All right. Guillermo.
So from my perspective, I believe that AI related to live sports, live piracy is a two sides coin, right? So it is a very good opportunity for the enforcement, but also it is a very big threat. So for all intermediary sites, AI can be used as a very powerful tool to help them to avoid manual work and also to try to get faster responses. But also we are seeing that pirates are also very smart and they are moving faster. They are starting also to use AI. So what we need also is try to have some legal framework, legal background that can support and that can provide some confidence to our industry, can really work to protect the IP related with AI and kind of avoid any situations in which we may have an AI that is specifically being used for piracy. But in general, I believe that this is a very great opportunity, and I'm really looking forward that all the intermediaries start using AI to provide faster responses.
Thank you. All right.
Sure.
Yeah. Over to Edward.
Thank you. Well, early at this stage, for our tool sets for search and discovery, it's definitely important building out things to help us find it faster and different iterations and being kind of trying to get in front of it, like what's likely the next move. But on the front end, as far as how it's manifesting itself, we're seeing early stages of it using a trademark, or we call them counterfeit sites as an example. They're leveraging trademarks, they're creating some content, some video content around it. Sometimes it's real easy to see, but that's its early as far as what we've been seeing so far. As far as being live content, that's still it's still too early. It's too early to tell right now how it's going to manifest itself a year from now, but we are trying to stay on top of it, leveraging AI itself, obviously, to stay on top of it and reaching out to our partners and just trying to stay up on top of it. Like where are the loose ends at this stage, but it's still early stages for live, but for VOD and again counterfeit, I would recommend everybody go look and look at counterfeit sites already using your IP in different ways, but it goes up pretty quick, and they set up tons of accounts all at once, and they different on different platforms. So again, that's why we need that notice and takedown quickly to take them all down, which is good.
Thank you. All right. So we have a category of questions now where, we talked a little bit about the theme of the day. We talked a little bit about each of your organizations, where you're coming at this from, the connection with sports and copyright from where you sit, and then a little bit more about, emerging technology and how you're all encountering the artificial intelligence sort of trend. Now, I think I'd like to go around and just have you talk a little bit about what additional tools or changes to laws would be helpful to you. I think keeping it tied to IP, because this is World IP Day, would be wise. But if there are sort of tangential things you want to mention too, that's fine as well. So we'll start there, then we'll take some questions if we have time. And Michael, I'm coming back to you.
So, yes, we could always use more tools. But what I want to focus on is more policy-related tools as it relates to copyright and enforcement, and the like. So, there hasn't been an intellectual property enforcement coordinator in the last administration or in this administration. I would love to see, a greater emphasis be put on intellectual property policy, both the innovation side as well as the enforcement side. So staffing the IPEC, driving down priorities from the top of the administration to the departments, making IP enforcement a I think those are all within the prerogative of any sitting president and any leader of any department to look at this issue and say, hey, we are still the best in innovating and creating, and the backbone of that is our intellectual property laws. So I don't necessarily look at this through the lens of, hey, we need new tools. I look at this through the lens of, hey, let's try to leverage the existing tools and the existing framework that the U.S. government has built over decades to help really solve some of these issues for us. So that's where I come at this issue.
Thanks. Randy, over to you.
Yeah, I think really it is a lot of the stuff is AI related for us in terms of changes to the law or things that we want Congress to be looking at. We've supported a bunch of different bills that are in Capitol Hill, circulating in Capitol Hill right now, and they're all aimed at trying to make sure that our songwriters and composers get compensated fairly. They have the right to consent whether or not their works are being used for training purposes, and we're getting credit at the end of the day that their works are being used for output. So I think that's really top of mind. The other AI related things that we've supported are things that address what's the word, like fake performances of a performer whose image and likeness and voice are being copied by generative AI service to protect against that. Just like misuse basically of AI. So I think those are it's really top of mind for us and for the entire music industry.
Thanks, Randy. Chris?
Yeah, I think this one, unfortunately for NFPA, it's an easy answer. It's the law, right? And we actually are trying to work with Congress on the Pro Codes Act. And I talked a little bit about our website, don'tchancesafety.org, but fundamentally, a law that would say that where the government or citizens benefit from the use of privately developed safety standards to keep people safe, which is a very efficient partnership, that fundamentally that copyright would be protected. And so that's a change that we're really trying to advocate for. And there was actually a hearing this week on it, so it's very exciting stuff. But ultimately, we want to continue to accomplish our mission. And so that's the big thing that we're really focusing on from a law standpoint at this time.
Thanks. All right, Guillermo.
So from my side, I believe that there are a few changes on the laws can really support us on our day-to-day work. Dynamic blocking is one of those very powerful weapons that can help us a lot to deal with our day-to-day infringements. But sometimes I understand that the laws can take time and are not so easy to get them approved. So I have other changes that can be implemented really fast and can provide really good results. So having a stronger KYBC policies from different intermediaries, from different companies, having also a very structured and effective policy against repeat offenders, and also being able to act faster by allocating a team resources to be able to act 24 hours, 7 days per week. We have very big and powerful companies that they don't have even a 24 hours, 7 day per week team managing all the claims. So it is also very important to be able to deal with all of that.
Thank you. It's a lot of work. All right, Edward.
Guillermo pretty much said it. I think I would just add on to dynamic blocking. It's, well, actually, first priority number one, the low-hanging fruit is update the DMCA so that it is immediate takedown to find that so people do have staff on the weekends or automated services that actually handle it automatically and just take it down and such. Next, though, is dynamic blocking. We call it site blocking. It's same thing essentially, and it's the big giant. There's so much piracy there that takes place, but it has to be addressed. They're doing it so well, and so many other countries have been doing it for a long time. It's been proven. It's something definitely we're missing here. I bring that thing I just add on to Guillermo is that this site blocking is one thing, and we talk about site blocking is the sites in which it's being promoted. These have obvious intent to promote illegal live streams of these events. The next piece of that is to also block the source of the stream or the recorded content, which is 99% of the times they're totally different. unrelated. So we need a way in which to be able to block both of those. The next piece of that is to make it dynamic. As Guillermo said, is because they change them on the fly, they will forward to new URLs. They'll have backup sources of the stream or the recorded content. So it's to make it dynamic is super important. The last piece of that is to make it so it's cost effective. My understanding, and Guillermo can probably speak to this in other countries, it's still a little bit expensive. There's some legal processes in place that can make it expensive to even do it, especially for companies that may not have the resources and budgets to actually put forth an order for website block or for site blocking. That's something to keep in mind as they start thinking about legislation for this to make it an efficient process for everybody and allow us to be dynamic so we can make sure we can block all the new URLs, domains, and the IP addresses for sources.
Thanks. All right. So thank you so much. I have a couple of questions that have come in for a couple of you specifically. And then if we have time, I might ask if you just have anything else to add before we end. So I have a question for Randy. What can BMI do, if anything, to help move us forward and allow real music to make its way into sports social content, which is the #1 music discovery engine in the world?
Can you repeat that again? I'm a little
Sure.
confused on that question.
I think the idea is I'll just kind of rephrase the question, which is I think the user's interested, the person asking the question is interested in sort of like how does music make its way into sports social content? It's kind of a layered question. There might be a little bit to take apart there and explain, but because people might find music in social content that's featuring sports, you have a whole like copyright stack there. How does music get into social content, and how does it get into sports-related social content, and what is BMI's role or view of that from where you sit?
I see.
And anyone else can answer this too, obviously, because we have a whole bunch of experts on the call.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I think that there's probably a mix of ways. One is the production studios that are putting together the clips that are featured in like social content. They're choosing music to go along with the action in the clips, and it might be part of a larger piece of content that is just shortened for purposes of posting on social media. It might also just be like the social media manager is deciding on their own to pick an appropriate sounding piece of music to combine with a clip that they were given. I think so. I don't think there's a particularly special way of music getting into that content. From BMI's perspective, we license, of course, the streaming of it from the platform, and so we have licenses from the social media. We've licenses with the social media platforms to cover that performance. But the synchronization element of it, like I said, is not it's not licensed by us.
Right. Yes. Thank you for that clinic earlier on the difference between those different sticks in the bundle of rights. And anyone else want to comment at all on sports, social media, and music? Next question is for Michael. This is a question about if you're looking to embrace esports with festivals, and maybe you're outside the US, or you could be in the US and just looking to sort of stand up a new kind of festival. One of the challenges that this person's run into is just obtaining the right licenses and affiliations with the gaming brands to host the tournaments. There's a wrinkle to the question, which is there's some interest in doing this not only in the United States, but also on the African continent. And so if you have anything you want to share about how to navigate that, not legal advice, of course, but just a perspective from where you sit. Yeah. We'd love to hear a little bit about that, because it sounds like it's an exciting market, but it's complicated business.
Absolutely. The one thing I can say for sure is that, video game companies are always trying to grow and expand their markets and bring games to a broader swath of the world. I worked at Nintendo for a few years, and Nintendo's mantra was, bringing smiles to faces around the world. So, this is, certainly something that the video game industry, focuses on. The thing that I can't answer for this person is how you end up doing that. That's more of a business kind of calculation. But I am very encouraged that they're seeking licensing options, right? Like as everyone here who's a copyright nerd understands that that's the way that that's the way the system is supposed to work. And when it works that way, it benefits all. But maybe what I can add is just some context to how some of our members see esports, because they all don't leverage esports the same way. Some members use it strictly as a marketing vehicle. So it's not a money generating thing for them. It is a way to get their game out there so that they can, so that more people see it, more people want to play it. So that's, one way people use esports. There's another way that people use esports is as a revenue generating enterprise. Renting out the stadium, selling concessions, putting up 50, 60 million in prize money, and getting teams to register and things like that, and also getting streaming rights. Those all those things are another way that some video game companies use esports. So I think context is important, and understanding that the different ways in how companies look at esports may impact if they're willing to expand into new markets. I think that context might be helpful, even though I couldn't really help with your specific question of avenues to license.
Thanks. I'll just put a quick plug in here, not specifically for that question, but just on behalf of the Copyright Office when it comes to, conducting research about any kind of material that you're looking to use. It's not the only tool that you'll need, but it is an important tool, and it is free. The Copyright Office's public records, cover what's been registered with the Copyright Office of the United States for protection. And copyright.gov has plenty of tools and educational stuff to dig into as you kind of wrap your head around all of this. All of us would be speaking to a vast array of audiences, from people who have woke up this morning and decided to get really excited about copyright with us, which I really welcome, to people who are old hats, who go way back. This is what you nerd out on, and you're just excited to get into how it applies to sports. So I certainly encourage you to contact any of these organizations, as well as the office, for information about copyright. I have one more question for Randy, and then I'm going to ask each of you to give some closing thoughts. Randy, people are just very interested in music and sports, so I'm glad that you're here. Is there, we're talking about a song used in, say, a stadium, sports stadium. We had the Olympics earlier. We've got FIFA coming up. There's all kinds of sports that happen all year round. Is there any scenario where a song would not generate public performance income, or I guess trigger the copyright underlying it, or trigger a royalty payment when performed in the stadium? So are ephemeral uses possible in stadiums?
Even ephemeral uses would be a public performance that would implicate the public performance right, and so so we would say that I guess every kind of performance would have to be done on purpose, right? It's not something that just like accidentally happens. So we would consider that a licensable use. That's why. Again, we license, we issue blanket licenses so the venue can play however many times they want any of the songs in our repertoire, or none. It's their choice.
Thank you so much. All right, I think we're going to go backwards order. And Edward, I'll start with you. Any closing thoughts you have? Anything that you wish you would have known about the intersection of sports and copyright, or anything you want to, words of wisdom to leave us with?
I think it's just still being persistence that in this day and age and helping get the persistence with the sources of content, delivery of content, being persistent with them to let them know how important this is. That it's not just their, they're getting people moving people behind a paywall, but it affects people on down the line as far as people from production to the creative people, everybody. So it's not just the people you're thinking about at the top. So it's important to them. I think persistence with them, but changing the law, I think is for everybody to get on board. The low-hanging fruit is still, I'll just keep bringing that up since it should be low-hanging fruit is to update the DMCA. It's just, it's thank goodness we had it in 2006 when we first launched our services, and but it's time for an update.
Thanks, Edward. Guillermo.
Yeah, fully agree. I believe that technology is evolving really fast, and sometimes our legal framework is a little bit behind. So we need to continue adapting ourselves as we do in our personal lives. And also, I would say that it is very important to consider that we are dealing with organized crime, and we need to take this very seriously. So all the support from all of the organizations, law enforcement agencies, technological intermediaries, associations, it is crucial to be really effective against this huge challenge we are dealing with at the audiovisual industry.
Thanks, Guillermo. Chris.
So I think when I reflect on this topic, I always think, when we were little kids, none of us said, I want to dream to be a copyright expert. And we think about this type, but maybe Miriam, maybe you did. I get that. But we also have to have some fun in this. So I keep pointing to our website, but we actually did a fun video with Jonathan Scott from Property Brothers to talk about this, to help highlight this stuff, which is just a fun way to say this is a really serious issue that fundamentally challenges the landscape, whether it's esports or safety standards. And while we can have some fun at it, it's a difficult topic. I saw in some of the chats and questions, it's a difficult topic to understand. So I encourage people to really dig into that and see where you can impact in your organizations, or at least put a spotlight on this. But thanks again to everybody for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right, Andy.
I think people do recognize this, but I just want to emphasize, the importance of music in sports. Obviously people don't go watch the sporting event to listen to the music specifically, but it really changes, the experience in a way that it's just really fundamental to it, and people just don't necessarily think of it and its importance. So music is really important in sports, and imagining a sporting event without it is, it's a totally different thing. So make sure you get your licenses.
Thanks. All right, Michael, take us home.
So I think generally we are going to continue to see a trend of the creative industries continue to intersect with other kinds of traditional properties. And that's why we're all here today on World IP Day talking about issues that we really love and respect. And, for me, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk about the video game industry. But I think in general, looking down at the horizon, we are going to definitely see more intersection between creativity and, traditional forms of entertainment. And, it is up to the thought leaders to adjust and figure out how to keep innovation growing. And I'm proud to be part of this very special group who I learned a lot from today, and want to thank the Copyright Alliance for putting it together. And Miriam, thank you for steering us down the road. You've been awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you. We've had a great engaged audience, and it's such a pleasure to spend for what for me on the East Coast this afternoon with all of you who may be having an early afternoon or a late evening somewhere or an afternoon like us. I just want to thank you so much for joining us today, for sending us your questions, and to all of our speakers for your expertise, for your careful thought about these issues, about how it fits into this year's theme, and for your dedication to these important areas. I do want to recognize on behalf of the Copyright Office, this is World IP Day. Every year, this is something that we participate in with all of our sister organizations, with affinity groups, with members of the public who are excited to do things like stop in and see the exhibit we have on the Hill. And every year we have a different theme, and I think that with the amount of news coverage that there's been this year about sports and copyright, and the amount of coverage that sometimes reflects less understanding of some of the fundamentals of copyright and how the system works together, like how the licensing all fits together and all those sticks in the bundle of rights. It's just so helpful to have all of you explain things from your corner, your corner of the ecosystem. So thanks so much. And of course, special thanks to the Copyright Alliance staff for running things behind the scenes and for hosting and bringing us together and sponsoring this. And of course, to Keith for welcoming all of us. Thank you, all of you. My understanding is that it will be recorded and posted later. So if that was your question, yes. And thank you all again. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and happy World IP Day on Sunday.